Doctor stood in the medical bay of the USMS Mercy's light, watching the stars drift past the large viewing window. The hospital ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, with a bright red cross painted on its white hull. For 3 years had called this ship home. He worked alongside the best doctors and nurses from across the galaxy, treating anyone who needed help. The ship followed the Galactic Medical Neutrality Treaty. This meant no one could attack them. They helped everyone, no matter which side of a war they fought on, believed in this mission deeply. He studied alien life forms to help doctors treat different species better. Come look at this. Dr. Lisa Grant called from across the lab. She was his research partner and closest friend on the ship. Lisa had joined the medical corps 5 years ago, right after finishing her studies on Earth. Her specialty was alien diseases, and she was brilliant at her work. Walked over to her workstation. She was examining tissue samples from a patient they had treated last week. The samples glowed softly under the microscope's special light. The cellular structure is completely different from what we expected, Lisa said, pointing to the screen. Look how the mitochondria cluster together. This could change how we treat infections. Leaned closer to study the data. You're right. We should send this to the research station on Luna. They'll want to see this discovery. The ship's intercom crackled to life. All medical staff to stations. We have received multiple distress calls from the 442 system. Captain Hayes requests all departments prepare for emergency medical operations. And Lisa exchanged glances. The 442 system was right in the middle of the war zone between the Empire and the Republic. Both sides had been fighting for months over control of the system's mining planets. They quickly secured their research materials and headed to the main medical bay. The ship was buzzing with activity as doctors and nurses prepared for incoming casualties. Captain John Hayes' voice echoed through the corridors. Attention crew. We have reports of heavy fighting in the 442 system. Multiple civilian transports are damaged and need immediate medical assistance. We will be entering the system in 2 hours. Remember, we are neutral. We help everyone. Found his assigned station in the emergency medical bay. The large room could handle over 200 patients at once. Medical beds lined the walls, and surgical equipment hung from the ceiling on mechanical arms. Everything was clean and white, designed to save lives. Dr. Cole, the chief medical officer, briefed the staff. We expect casualties from both end forces, plus civilians caught in the fighting. Follow standard protocols. Treat the most seriously injured first, regardless of species or military affiliation. The next 2 hours passed quickly as the crew prepared, checked and rechecked his medical supplies. He specialized in treating non-human species, so his station was equipped with medicines and tools for dozens of different alien physiologies. Lisa worked at the station next to his. She smiled at him as they worked. Just like the training simulations, right? Except this time it's real, replied. He had seen war casualties before, but it never got easier. The ship's engines changed pitch as they dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewing ports, could see the 442 system. Several planets orbited the yellow star, and space around them flickered with weapons fire. Ships from both sides were fighting near the third planet. Medical transport approaching, announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah from the bridge. Vessel with 47 wounded aboard. The first transport docked with the hospital ship 20 minutes later. Medical teams rushed to help transfer the injured patients. Worked on a young soldier who had severe burns from a plasma weapon. The soldier's blue skin was badly damaged, but knew exactly how to treat this type of injury. For the next 6 hours, transport after transport arrived. Soldiers came in with wounds from energy weapons. Fighters arrived with injuries from projectile guns. And Lisa worked side by side, saving lives without caring which side their patients fought for. The hospital ship moved slowly through the system, picking up wounded from damaged vessels. Both military forces respected the medical ship's neutrality. When fighters approached, they scanned the ship and moved away without attacking. Cruisers did the same. This is how it should be, Lisa said during a brief break. No war in space, just people helping people. Nodded. He was tired but satisfied. They had saved over 300 lives today. The medical bay was full of recovering patients from both sides of the conflict. Some and soldiers even talked to each other from their medical beds, sharing stories instead of shooting at each other. Captain Hayes announced over the intercom that they would make one more pickup run before leaving the system. A civilian transport near the outer planet had sent a distress call. The ship was carrying refugees trying to escape the war zone. The hospital ship changed course toward the outer system, was treating an officer with internal injuries when the ship's proximity alarms started blaring. He looked up at the nearest viewing port and saw 3 dark shapes moving toward them. Destroyers approaching, Lieutenant Commander announced, broadcasting our medical status now. The 3 warships were massive, each one larger than the hospital ship. Their hulls were dark gray with the Empire's symbol painted on their sides. Wasn't worried. The ships would scan them, confirm their medical status, and move on. But something was wrong. The warships weren't slowing down. They were moving into attack formation. This is Captain Hayes of the medical vessel, USMS Mercy's Light. The captain's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. We are operating under the Galactic Medical Neutrality Treaty. We are treating wounded from both sides of this conflict. The ships didn't respond. Warning lights began flashing throughout the hospital ship. All hands brace for impact, Captain Hayes ordered. This is not a drill. Looked at Lisa in confusion. They can't attack us. We're a hospital ship. The first energy blast hit the ship's lower section. The lights flickered and the ship shook violently. Patients screamed in fear and pain as medical equipment crashed to the floor. "We're under attack," someone shouted. Couldn't believe what was happening. In the history of galactic warfare, no one had ever attacked a medical ship operating under the Neutrality Treaty. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. But it was happening. The second blast hit the main engine section. The ship's power systems failed, and emergency lighting kicked in. The red lights made everything look like it was covered in blood. Lisa grabbed his arm. "We need to get the patients to the escape pods." They ran through the corridors, helping injured patients move toward the emergency stations. All around them, doctors and nurses were doing the same thing. Everyone was trying to save as many lives as possible. The third blast tore through the medical bay, where and Lisa had been working just minutes before. The explosion was so powerful that it sent shock waves through the entire ship. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7, the ship's computer announced in its calm voice. Life support failing. All personnel to emergency stations. Helped carry a wounded child toward the nearest escape pod bay. The little girl was crying for her mother. Behind him, he could hear Lisa helping an elderly civilian who couldn't walk on his own. When they reached the escape pod bay, chaos greeted them. Dozens of people were trying to get into the small emergency vessels. There weren't enough pods for everyone. "Medical staff last," Dr. Cole ordered. "Patients first, then support crew, then medical staff." Watched as pod after pod launched from the dying hospital ship. Each one carried 20 people to safety. At least, he hoped it was safety. Lisa appeared beside him, supporting the elderly man. "The pods from Section 3 aren't launching," she said. "Something's wrong with the emergency systems." "I'll check it out," said. "Get this man to a pod." "No, I'll go," Lisa replied. "You're better with the launch systems than I am." Before could argue, she handed the elderly man to him and ran toward Section 3. Wanted to follow her, but the man needed help getting to a pod. He got the civilian safely into an escape pod and watched it launch. Then he ran toward Section 3 to find Lisa. The corridor was filled with smoke and debris. Emergency lights flickered on and off. Could barely see where he was going. He called Lisa's name but got no answer. When he reached Section 3, he found Lisa working frantically on a control panel. 6 escape pods full of patients were trapped in their launch tubes. The system's locked up, she told him. I need another 2 minutes to override it. That was when the 4th blast hit the ship. This one was different. It came from directly above them and tore through multiple decks at once. The explosion threw backward into the corridor. When he looked back into Section 3, Lisa was gone. The entire room had been destroyed by the blast. The 6 escape pods and everyone in them were gone too. Stared at the empty space where Lisa had been standing. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. Lisa was the person he knew. She always found a way to fix things. She always survived. But she wasn't there anymore. Emergency alarms were screaming throughout the ship. The gravity systems failed and began floating in the corridor. His training kicked in and he grabbed a handheld emergency beacon from the wall. If he was going to die, at least his body would be found. He made his way to the last remaining escape pod in his section. It was a single-person medical pod designed for transporting critical patients. Climbed inside and activated the launch sequence. As the pod ejected from the dying hospital ship, looked back through the small window. The USMS Mercy's light was breaking apart. The 3 destroyers were still firing on the wreckage, making sure nothing survived. But that wasn't the worst part. Through his pod's sensors, could see the other escape pods floating in space. The ships were hunting them down one by one, destroying them with precise weapons fire. Watched in horror as destroyer after destroyer methodically eliminated every escape pod they could find. These weren't military targets. These were wounded patients, doctors, nurses, and civilians, people who had never hurt anyone. They were committing murder on a scale had never imagined possible. His pod's beacon was off, so the destroyers couldn't detect him easily. Floated in space for 6 hours, watching the ships finish their work. They destroyed every piece of debris larger than a person. They wanted no witnesses. When the human cruiser UES Defiant finally arrived to investigate the distress calls, they found Spod and 12 other survivors out of 847 people who had been aboard the hospital ship. As was pulled aboard the rescue ship, he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa. She had died trying to save people who couldn't save themselves. She had died believing that the galaxy was a place where medical neutrality meant something. They had proven her wrong in the most brutal way possible. Captain Helen Cross of the Defiant found in the medical bay 3 hours later. She was a tough woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Doctor, I need to ask you some questions about what happened. Looked at her with empty eyes. They murdered everyone, Captain. They murdered a hospital ship. I know, Captain Cross said quietly. And I promise you they're going to pay for what they did. But knew better. The galaxy was full of promises that nobody kept. Politics would get in the way. Treaties would be signed. They would say it was a mistake, and eventually everyone would forget. Everyone except. He closed his eyes and made a promise of his own. They had taken everything from him. They had killed Lysa. They had destroyed his faith in galactic civilization, and they had turned him into something he never wanted to be. But they had made one mistake. They had let him live. And Doctor was going to make sure they regretted that mistake for the rest of their very short lives. Stood in the cemetery on Earth, staring at the empty grave marker that bore Lisa Grant's name. There was no body to bury. Her remains were scattered across space along with the wreckage of the hospital ship. The marker was just a piece of stone with words carved into it, but it was all he had left of her. The funeral had been 3 days ago. Representatives from 12 different species had attended to honor the victims of the hospital ship massacre. They gave speeches about peace and justice. They promised that the galaxy would never forget what happened to the USMS Mercy's Light. Knew they were lying. Politicians always lied when it was convenient. He turned away from the grave and walked back to his transport. Earth looked the same as it always had, but everything felt different now. The blue sky seemed too bright. The green grass looked fake. Nothing felt real anymore except the anger burning in his chest. Captain Helen Cross had given him 6 months of medical leave. She said he needed time to heal from the trauma. Had nodded and agreed, but he had no intention of healing. He had work to do. The transport took him to the military research complex in Colorado. The facility was built into the side of a mountain, hidden from view by holographic projectors. Most people didn't even know it existed. Had been there once before, years ago, when he was consulting on alien biology for the Defense Department. Admiral Peter Stone was waiting for him in the main lobby. Stone was a tall man with silver hair and serious eyes. He had been commanding officer during the conflict, before had transferred to medical service. "I'm sorry for your loss," Stone said, shaking his hand. "Lisa was a good officer and a brilliant doctor." "Thank you, sir," replied. His voice sounded flat and emotionless. Stone led him through several security checkpoints and into a conference room deep inside the mountain. 2 other people were waiting there. Dr. Rachel was a weapons engineer had worked with before. She specialized in electromagnetic systems. Carter was a systems analyst who had helped design the navigation computers for the generation of human warships. "Before we begin," Stone said, "I need to know that you're serious about this. What you're proposing goes against everything you've stood for as a medical officer." Looked at each of them in turn. The murdered 847 innocent people. They destroyed a hospital ship operating under a neutrality treaty. They hunted down and killed survivors in escape pods. And what happened to them? Nothing. The Galactic Council issued a statement of concern. The Empire said it was a mistake and promised to investigate. No one was punished. No one was held responsible. So you want revenge, Rachel said. It wasn't a question. I want justice, corrected. And if the galaxy won't give me justice, then I'll take revenge. Stone activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a detailed scan of physiology. Tell us what you need. I stood up and walked to the display. For the first time in weeks, he felt focused. This was something he could do. This was something he understood. Our silicon-based life forms, he began. Their nervous systems operate on completely different principles than carbon-based species. They use crystalline matrices to store and transmit neural information. These matrices are incredibly efficient, but they have a weakness. He manipulated the display to show a close-up of a brain. The crystalline structures resonate at specific electromagnetic frequencies. Most species can't detect these frequencies, but human technology can generate them precisely. Leaned forward. What happens if you disrupt the resonance? Neural cascade failure, said simply. The entire nervous system shuts down. It's instant and irreversible. But here's the important part. It only affects. Other species would barely notice the electromagnetic pulse. Rachel's eyes lit up with understanding. You want to build a weapon that targets their biology specifically. Not just a weapon, said. A complete weapons system. Something that can be deployed from orbit, from ships, even from handheld devices. Something that makes it impossible for them to fight back. Stone was quiet for a long moment. The Ethics Committee will never approve this. Biological weapons are banned under the Geneva Conventions. This isn't a biological weapon, replied. It's an electromagnetic weapon that happens to exploit biological vulnerabilities. Completely different thing. You're splitting hairs, Stone said. I'm splitting skulls, shot back. Or I will be if you give me the resources I need. over the next 2 hours, outlined his plan in detail. The first weapon would be the neural cascade generator, a device that could be mounted on ships or deployed as orbital platforms. It would generate precisely tuned electromagnetic pulses that would shut down nervous systems across wide areas. But that was just the beginning. Also proposed the quantum echo tracker, a system that could identify and track any vessel containing genetic material. The tracker would use quantum entanglement principles to maintain contact with target ships across any distance. Basically explained, once we've tagged a ship, we can find it anywhere in the galaxy. No matter how far they run, no matter where they hide, we'll always know exactly where they are. Was taking notes on his tablet. The quantum tracking system would require enormous computational power. We're talking about processing quantum states across galactic distances. That's where the third component comes in, said. The hive-mind interface. We connect all our tracking systems into a single network. Every sensor, every scanner, every reconnaissance probe feeds information into the central intelligence. We'll know where every ship is at all times. Rachel shook her head. What you're describing isn't just weapons. It's a complete surveillance and elimination system. You're talking about hunting down an entire species. Not an entire species, corrected. Just the military. Just the ones who commit war crimes. Just the ones who murder hospital ships. Stone studied the technical specifications had drawn up. How long would this take to build? 6 months for the first prototypes, said. Maybe 8 months for full deployment. I'll need a team of engineers, access to quantum computing resources, and a test ship. And you want to test these weapons on live targets, Stone said. I want to test them on the ships that attacked the hospital ship, replied. I have their quantum signatures from the sensor logs. I know exactly which ships they were and who commanded them. Stone was quiet for a long time. Could see him weighing the moral implications against the military advantages. Finally, the admiral spoke. The official position is that we're developing defensive systems to protect our medical ships from future attacks. These weapons will be classified as deterrent technologies, not offensive weapons. And unofficially asked, unofficially, you have whatever resources you need. Rachel will head the engineering team. We'll handle the computing systems. I'll make sure you have a ship for field testing. It felt something like satisfaction for the first time since Lisa's death. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Stone said. What you're planning to do will change you. It will change all of us. Once you cross this line, there's no going back. I already crossed the line, said. I crossed it the moment they opened fire on innocent people. I crossed it when I watched them murder survivors in escape pods. I crossed it when I realized that no one else was going to do anything about it. Stone nodded slowly. Then God help us all. The meeting ended with being assigned to Laboratory Complex 7. A facility that officially didn't exist. He was given unlimited access to resources and personnel. His new identification listed him as a senior research scientist working on electromagnetic shielding systems. That night sat in his temporary quarters looking at a picture of Lisa. She was smiling in the photo, wearing her medical uniform. She looked happy and hopeful. She looked like someone who believed the galaxy was fundamentally good. I'm going to make them pay, he whispered to the picture. I'm going to make every single one of them pay for what they did to you. He put the picture away and opened his laptop. The screen filled with technical specifications and mathematical equations. Began to work. His brilliant mind focused on a single goal. The had awakened something in humanity that they were going to regret. For the next 6 months, worked 18 hours a day. He barely slept and hardly ate. Rachel and tried to convince him to take breaks, but he refused. Every moment he wasted was another moment they were free to commit more atrocities. The first prototype neural cascade generator was ready in 4 months. Tested it on captured equipment from previous battles. The device worked perfectly, shutting down electronics instantly while leaving human systems completely unaffected. The quantum echo tracker took longer to perfect, but by month 6, had successfully tracked a merchant vessel across 3-star systems. The ship's crew never knew they were being monitored. General visited the laboratory during the final month of development. She was a stern woman who had commanded human forces during the Rigel campaign. She listened to his presentation without expression. "Impressive work, Doctor," she said when he finished. "When do you plan to begin field testing?" "As soon as you give me a ship," replied. "The UES Retribution is being fitted with your systems as we speak. It's an experimental vessel, officially classified as a research ship. You'll have a hand-picked crew of volunteers." Nodded. "I'll need people I can trust. People who understand what we're really doing out there." "Already taken care of," said. "Commander Jake will be your pilot. He lost his brother in the attack on the transport ship Liberty. Lieutenant Amy Foster will handle tactical systems. Her entire family was killed when they bombed the civilian station at Vega Prime." "What about engineering?" asked Chief Dan. "He was supposed to be aboard the Mercy's Light when it was attacked, but he was reassigned at the last minute. He's been asking for a chance to strike back ever since." I smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Perfect. When do we leave?" 2 weeks, said. "Your first mission will be to test the systems on a small patrol. Nothing too ambitious. Just proof of concept." "I already have a target in mind," said. "The destroyer ZES Vengeance. It was one of the ships that attacked the hospital ship." Raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about that?" "I'm sure about everything," replied. "I've been tracking that ship for months. I know where it patrols, I know its crew complement, and I know exactly what they did to my people." "Then the ZES Vengeance will be your first target," said. "Make it count, Doctor. The galaxy is watching." Looked at the prototype weapons surrounding him in the laboratory. 6 months ago, he had been a healer, dedicated to preserving life. Now he was a weapon designer, focused on taking it. Lisa would have been horrified by what he had become. But Lisa was dead, murdered by the same people he was now preparing to hunt. Had made his choice, and he was going to see it through to the end. The had taught him that the galaxy was a place where strength mattered more than morality. They were about to learn that humans could be very strong indeed when they were properly motivated. Was ready to go to war. The UES Retribution drifted silently through space near the edge of the system. From the outside, it looked like a standard human research vessel. It was painted white with scientific markings along its hull. But inside, the ship carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. Stood on the bridge, watching the main display screen. His crew was small but carefully chosen. Each person had lost someone to attacks. Each person wanted revenge as much as he did. Commander Jake sat at the pilot's station. Jake had been flying military ships for 15 years. He was steady under pressure and never asked questions didn't want to answer. His younger brother had died on a transport ship that raiders had destroyed 6 months ago. Lieutenant Amy Foster controlled the tactical systems. She was young but brilliant with weapons technology. Amy had grown up on Vega Prime before they bombed the civilian station there. Her parents, 2 brothers and younger sister, had all been killed in the attack. Chief Dan ran the engineering section. Dan had been scheduled to serve on the hospital ship Mercy's Light, but a last-minute reassignment had saved his life. He blamed himself for not being there to help his friends. Now he wanted to make the pay for what they had done. Contact on long-range sensors, Amy reported. 3 ships, configuration, moving toward the refugee convoy at coordinates 77 Alpha. Studied the sensor readings. The lead ship matched the quantum signature he had been tracking for months. It was the ZES Vengeance, one of the destroyers that had attacked the hospital ship. That's our target, said quietly. Jake set course to intercept. Amy, prepare the neural cascade weapon for firing. Understood, Jake replied. The retribution changed course smoothly, moving toward the ships. Watched the tactical display as they approached. The three destroyers were attacking a small convoy of refugee ships. The civilians were running for their lives, but their transports were slow and lightly armed. They were hunting them like predators chasing prey. This is just like what they did to us, Dan said from his engineering station. They're murdering innocent people. Not anymore, replied. The retribution moved closer, staying hidden behind a small asteroid. The ships were focused on their attack and didn't notice the human vessel approaching. Neural cascade weapon is ready, Amy reported. All systems showing green. I took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been working toward for 8 months. Everything he had built, everything he had planned, came down to the next few minutes. Fire, he ordered. The weapon discharged silently. There was no visible beam, no explosion, no dramatic flash of light. The neural cascade generator simply sent out precisely tuned electromagnetic pulses toward the ships. On the display screen, watched the enemy vessels suddenly stop moving. Their engines shut down. Their weapons went silent. Their running lights flickered and died. Direct hit on all 3 targets, Amy said. Life signs are gone. The ships are drifting. Felt a cold satisfaction. The weapon had worked exactly as designed. Every on those ships was dead. Their nervous systems shut down instantly by the electromagnetic pulse. But the ships themselves were undamaged. Jake, take us alongside the lead destroyer, ordered. Dan, prepare a boarding party. Are we taking prisoners? Jake asked. No, replied. We're gathering evidence. The Retribution docked with the ZES Vengeance 20 minutes later. Led a small team aboard the dead ship. The corridors were filled with bodies, all of them collapsed at their stations. They looked like they had simply fallen asleep, but knew they were gone forever. The ship's computer systems were still functioning. plugged his portable scanner into the main database, and began downloading files. What he found made his anger burn even hotter. The ZES Vengeance had detailed records of its attacks on civilian targets. The ship had destroyed 17 refugee convoys in the past year. It had bombarded 3 civilian colonies. It had participated in the systematic murder of prisoners on 6 different occasions. But the worst discovery was a video file from the day the hospital ship was attacked. Played the recording and watched as the captain gave orders to fire on the medical vessel. The captain was laughing as he watched the hospital ship break apart. "Look at them run," the captain said in the recording. "Like insects fleeing from light. Destroy the escape pods. Leave no witnesses." Everything to his portable storage unit. Then he planted explosive charges throughout the ship. As his team returned to the Retribution, detonated the charges. The ZES Vengeance disappeared in a ball of fire. "One down," he said quietly. Over the next 3 months, and his crew hunted ships across the galaxy. They used the quantum echo tracking system to locate their targets, then struck with the neural cascade weapon. Each attack was quick, silent, and completely effective. They had no defense against the electromagnetic pulses. Their ships would simply stop working, leaving them helpless. Would board each vessel, download its computer files, and then destroy it completely. The evidence he gathered was horrifying. The military had been committing war crimes for years. They had a policy of attacking civilian targets to break enemy morale. They tortured prisoners for information, then killed them anyway. They had destroyed dozens of medical ships, refugee convoys, and civilian colonies. Each new discovery made more determined to continue his mission. The galaxy thought they were just another military force fighting a normal war. Knew the truth. They were monsters who needed to be stopped. "We've confirmed kills on 27 ships," Amy reported during a crew meeting. "Intelligence estimates that we've eliminated over 8,000 enemy personnel." It's not enough, replied. I've identified over 200 ships that were involved in war crimes. We need to find them all. Dan looked concerned. We've been out here for 3 months. The crew is tired. Maybe we should head back to base for resupply and rest. They don't get to rest, said coldly. The people they murdered don't get to rest. Neither do we. Jake spoke up from his position at the navigation console. I've been monitoring communications. They're starting to panic. They don't understand how their ships are being destroyed. Some of their commanders are refusing to leave port. Sam smiled grimly. Good, fear is what they deserve. The Retribution's next target was a battle group operating in the sector. Intelligence reports said they were planning to attack a human colony world. Couldn't let that happen. The battle group consisted of 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. It was the largest target had attempted so far. That's a lot of ships, Amy said as they approached the enemy formation. Are you sure the neural cascade weapon can handle all of them at once? We're about to find out, replied. The Retribution moved into position behind a gas giant's moon. The battle group was holding formation near the system's jump point, preparing to attack the colony. Multiple targets locked, Amy reported. Weapon is charged and ready. Looked at the tactical display. 12 ships, over 4,000 enemy personnel. All of them had chosen to serve a military that murdered civilians and destroyed hospital ships. Fire, he ordered. The neural cascade weapon discharged at maximum power. The electromagnetic pulse spread out in a wide cone, encompassing the entire battle group. One by one, the enemy ships went dark. Their engines shut down. Their weapons fell silent. 12 ships dead in space, crews eliminated instantly. All targets neutralized, Amy reported. No survivors detected. Felt a surge of satisfaction. This was the largest single victory against them since the war began. But more importantly, it was justice for all the innocent people they had killed. The boarding operation took 6 hours, and his team searched every ship in the battle group, downloading computer files and planting explosive charges. The evidence they gathered was even worse than before. The command ship contained detailed plans for attacking civilian colonies across 3 star systems. They weren't just fighting a war. They were planning genocide. Studied the files in his private quarters that night. They had lists of every human colony, every research station, every civilian outpost in their territory. They planned to destroy them all, one by one, until humanity surrendered completely. Lisa had been just the beginning. The hospital ship attack had been a test to see if the galaxy would respond to atrocities. When no one fought back, they had decided to escalate their campaign. Activated his communication system and sent an encrypted message to Admiral Stone. The message contained all the evidence he had gathered, plus his analysis of war plans. But he also included a personal message. Was no longer content to hunt individual ships. They were planning something much bigger, and he needed to stop them before it was too late. The next phase of his mission would take him to the heart of space. He was going to attack their military headquarters and eliminate their command structure. They had taught him that the galaxy was a place where strength mattered more than morality. They were about to learn just how strong an angry human could be. Looked at Lisa's picture on his desk. "I'm not done yet," he whispered. "Not even close." The retribution changed course, heading deeper into enemy territory. Was going to war, and he was going to win. The hunt was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Entire battle groups were disappearing without a trace. Their ships would be found days later, drifting in space with no survivors. The Empire was in chaos, and no one could explain what was happening. Watched the Galactic news reports from his quarters aboard the Retribution. The ship was hidden in the asteroid belt of the system, far from any major shipping routes. For 6 months, they had been hunting ships. had lost count of how many enemy vessels they had destroyed. An ambassador from the Republic appeared on the news screen. She was speaking at an emergency session of the Galactic Council. While we cannot approve of vigilante justice, she said carefully, we understand the frustration that has led to these attacks. The Empire has committed countless atrocities against civilian populations. Perhaps this unknown force is simply providing the justice that this council has failed to deliver. Smiled grimly. The had suffered under attacks for years. They were happy to see their enemies being hunted, even if they couldn't say so publicly. The next speaker was General from Earth Command. Recognized him immediately. Had been his commanding officer years ago, before had transferred to medical service. Earth condemns these attacks on forces, said, reading from a prepared statement. We call for whoever is responsible to cease these activities immediately and surrender to proper authorities. Turned off the news feed. Was saying what he had to say for political reasons, but knew the truth. Humanity was secretly celebrating every ship that disappeared. The attack on the hospital ship had made humans angry in ways the galaxy had never seen before. Lieutenant Amy Foster entered his quarters without knocking. She had been acting as his second-in-command for the past month, coordinating their attacks and managing intelligence gathering. We have a problem, she said. Long-range sensors are detecting a human fleet approaching our position. 3 cruisers and a battleship. Stood up quickly. How did they find us? Unknown. But they're broadcasting on secure channels, requesting that we surrender peacefully. Walked to the bridge with Amy. Commander Jake was at his pilot station, monitoring the approaching ships. Chief Dan was running diagnostics on all their systems. The lead ship is the UES Defiant, Jake reported. Same ship that rescued you after the hospital attack. Recognized the name. Captain Helen Cross commanded the Defiant. She had been kind to him during his rescue, but knew she was also a loyal officer who followed orders. They want to talk, Amy said. Captain Cross is requesting a personal meeting. Set up a secure communication channel, ordered. Let's hear what she has to say. Captain Cross appeared on the main screen a few minutes later. She looked older than remembered, with more gray in her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. Doctor, she said formally, by order of Earth Command, you are to cease all hostile activities and return to Earth for debriefing. I'm sorry, Captain replied. I can't do that. My mission isn't finished. Your mission? Cross raised an eyebrow. You've been hunting ships for 6 months. You've killed thousands of people. This has to stop. Those weren't people, said coldly. Those were war criminals. Every ship I've destroyed was involved in attacks on civilian targets. Every person I've killed had innocent blood on their hands. That's not for you to decide, Cross said. We have laws. We have courts and judges and proper procedures for dealing with war crimes. Laughed bitterly. Like the proper procedures that were followed after the hospital ship attack. What happened to the who murdered 847 innocent people? Where's their trial? Where's their punishment? Cross was quiet for a moment. I know you're angry. I know you want justice for what happened to Dr. Grant and the others. But this isn't the way. This is the only way, replied. The galaxy doesn't care about justice when it's inconvenient. They are planning to commit genocide against human colonies, and no one is stopping them. So I will. Please, think about what you're doing. Think about what Lisa would want. Felt anger surge through him. Don't talk to me about Lisa. You didn't watch her die. You didn't see the hunting down escape pods full of wounded patients. You don't get to tell me what she would want. The communication channel went silent for several long seconds. Finally, Cross spoke again. If you don't surrender, I'll have to stop you by force. You can try, said, but I have weapons you've never seen before. Weapons that can destroy your entire fleet without harming a single human crew member. You would attack human ships? Cross asked, shocked. I would disable human ships that try to stop me from completing my mission. Corrected. Your crews would survive, but your ships would be helpless. Cross studied his face on the screen. You've changed. You're not the same person I rescued 6 months ago. No, agreed. That person died with Lisa. The person you're talking to now is someone they created when they decided to murder a hospital ship. Cut the communication channel and turned to his crew. Jake, plot a course for the Zephyr system. Maximum speed. Oh, that's their home system, Amy said. They'll have hundreds of ships defending it. Good, replied. That means I can eliminate hundreds of war criminals in one operation. Dan looked up from his engineering station. Are you sure about this? Once we attack there, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will be hunting us. The entire galaxy should be thanking us, said. We're doing what they're too cowardly to do themselves. The Retribution jumped to hyperspace, leaving the human fleet behind. Knew that Captain Cross would follow him, but it would take her ships several hours to catch up. By then, he would already be at Zephyr Prime. During the journey, studied intelligence reports about the Zephyr Prime was heavily defended by orbital platforms and patrol fleets. The planet's surface was covered with military installations and training facilities. Most importantly, it was the headquarters of the Imperial Navy. The admirals and generals who had ordered the attack on the hospital ship were down there, planning more atrocities from the safety of their command bunkers. Had spent months perfecting his neural cascade technology. The latest version could be broadcast from orbit to affect an entire planet. Every military installation on the surface could be neutralized simultaneously. Approaching the Zephyr system, Jake announced. Multiple contacts on sensors. Looks like 3 full battle fleets. Looked at the tactical display. Over 200 ships were positioned around there. It was the largest concentration of enemy forces he had ever seen. They're all legitimate military targets, Amy said, studying the sensor readings. No civilian vessels in the area. Perfect, replied. Charge the neural cascade weapon to maximum power. We're going to end this war in one strike. The retribution moved deeper into the system, avoiding the main shipping lanes. Used his knowledge of patrol patterns to find gaps in their defenses. His ship was small and fast, built for stealth operations. As they approached Zephyr Prime, could see the planet's surface through the viewports. Cities covered the continents, connected by highways and transportation networks. Millions of civilians lived down there, going about their daily lives, but wasn't interested in civilians. His target was the massive military complex on the northern continent. Satellite imagery showed hundreds of buildings filled with military personnel. These were the people who planned attacks on hospitals and refugee convoys. Weapon is charged and ready, Amy reported. Target lock acquired on all military installations. Thought about Lisa one more time. She had died trying to save people who couldn't save themselves. She had believed that the galaxy was fundamentally good, that people would do the right thing when given the chance. She had been wrong. The galaxy was full of cowards who let evil prosper because fighting it was too difficult or too expensive. They had proven that strength was the only thing that mattered. Fire, ordered. The neural cascade weapon discharged at planetary scale. The electromagnetic pulse spread across Zephyr Prime's northern continent like an invisible wave. Every military installation was hit simultaneously. On the surface, military personnel simply collapsed at their posts. Command centers went silent. Training facilities emptied. The entire military infrastructure of the Empire died in less than 30 seconds. The orbital defense fleets suffered the same fate. 200 ships went dark as their crews were eliminated instantly. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been neutralized by a single human scientist with a personal grudge. All targets eliminated, Amy reported. Military command structure is completely destroyed. felt a cold satisfaction wash over him. He had done it. He had struck at the heart of the empire and eliminated the people responsible for countless atrocities. But even as he savored his victory, knew that his war was just beginning. The still had fleets scattered across the galaxy. There were still war criminals who needed to be hunted down and eliminated. And now, the entire galactic community would be coming after him. Had just declared war on one of the most powerful empires in known space. The galaxy would never be the same. Set course for the outer rim, ordered. We have more work to do. The retribution disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the crippled behind. Had become the most wanted man in the galaxy, but he didn't care. He had promises to keep and enemies to kill. The hunt would continue until every last war criminal was dead. Justice had finally come to the stars, and it wore a human face. The fortress world of Zephyr Secondary hung in space like a massive gray sphere. Its surface was covered with military installations, command bunkers, and defensive weapons. This was where the Imperial Council met to plan their wars and decide the fate of entire star systems. Studied the planet through the viewports of the retribution. Somewhere down there were the political leaders who had ordered the attack on the hospital ship. The same people who had planned the genocide of human colonies. Today, they would all die. It had been 2 weeks since destroyed this military infrastructure. The galaxy was in chaos. Ships were surrendering to enemy forces rather than risk facing the mysterious human weapon. 3 different species had declared war on the crippled empire, hopping to claim territory. But wasn't interested in territory or politics. He wanted the people responsible for Lisa's death. The Imperial Council was meeting today to discuss their response to his attacks. Planned to make sure it was their last meeting. Multiple ships approaching from the inner system, Lieutenant Amy Foster reported. Human configuration. It's the fleet that was chasing us. Turned to look at the tactical display. 4 human warships were moving toward Zephyr Secondary at maximum speed. The UES Defiant was in the lead, followed by 3 heavy cruisers. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Commander Jake said. Captain Cross wants to talk. And put her through, ordered. Captain Helen Cross appeared on the main screen. She looked tired and worried. Behind her could see the bridge of the Defiant bustling with activity. You have to stop this, Cross said without any greeting. What you did at Zephyr Prime has thrown the entire galaxy into chaos. 3 civilizations are at war. Millions of people are going to die. Millions of people were already dying, replied calmly. They were murdering civilians across dozens of star systems. I just leveled the playing field. By committing genocide yourself, Cross shot back. You killed over 200,000 military personnel in a single attack. How does that make you any better than them? Felt anger flash through him. Those weren't innocent civilians. They were soldiers who chose to serve an empire that murders hospital ships. Every single one of them had blood on their hands. And what about their families? Cross asked. What about their children who will grow up without parents? What about the innocent people who will suffer because you've destabilized an entire region of space? They should have thought about that before they started their war crimes, said coldly. Behind Cross could see another figure approaching. It was Commander Ellen Price, a military psychologist he recognized from his service files. She was young, but had a reputation for understanding how trauma affected soldiers. Doctor, Price said, stepping into view. I've studied your psychological profile. You're suffering from severe trauma-induced psychosis. You need help, not revenge. He laughed bitterly. I'm the sanest person in this conversation. You're all trying to protect war criminals while I'm delivering justice. You're not delivering justice, Price replied. You're spreading death and destruction across the galaxy. Lisa Grant dedicated her life to healing people. Do you really think she would want you to become a mass murderer in her name? felt something twist in his chest at the mention of Lisa's name. For just a moment, he could see her face clearly in his memory. She was smiling at him across the laboratory on the hospital ship, excited about some new discovery. Don't talk about Lisa," he said quietly. "You didn't know her." "I know she was a doctor," Price continued. "I know she took an oath to do no harm. I know she believed in saving lives, not taking them. What would she think if she could see what you've become?" Closed the communication channel without responding. He turned away from the screen and walked to his command chair. Then Amy asked quietly, "Are you all right?" "Prepare the planetary bombardment system," ordered. "I want every government building on that planet targeted." "Sir," Chief Dan spoke up from his engineering station, "the weapon isn't designed for that kind of attack. We could hit civilian areas by mistake. Then we'll be more careful with our targeting," replied. Jake turned around in his pilot seat. "Maybe we should listen to Captain Cross. Maybe we've done enough." Stared at his friend in surprise. "Done enough? The Imperial Council is still alive. The people who ordered Lisa's murder are still breathing. How is that enough?" "Because this isn't what she would have wanted," Jake said firmly. "I knew Lisa too. She was kind and gentle and believed in the good in people. She wouldn't want you to become a killer because of her death. She's dead because the galaxy doesn't punish evil," shot back. "She's dead because everyone is too cowardly to do what needs to be done." Amy stood up from her tactical station. "I've followed you for 8 months. I've helped you hunt down war criminals because I believed in what we were doing. But this is different. You're talking about attacking a planet full of civilians. I'm talking about attacking the government that murdered 847 innocent people," corrected. "By using a weapon that could kill millions," Dan added. "I lost friends on that hospital ship too, but I won't be part of genocide." Looked around at his crew. These were the people who had followed him across the galaxy. They had trusted him, supported him, and helped him carry out his mission of revenge. Now they were turning against him. "Fine," said coldly. "If you won't help me, I'll do it myself." He walked over to the weapons control station and began entering targeting coordinates. The neural cascade weapon could be fired manually if necessary. He had designed it that way specifically for situations like this. "Stop," Amy said, moving toward him. "Stay back," warned, pulling out a plasma pistol. "I'm finishing this mission with or without your help." The bridge fell silent. Three closest friends stared at him in shock. They had never seen him threaten them before. "You're pointing a gun at your own crew," Jake said quietly. "Lisa would be heartbroken if she could see this." Felt his hand shaking slightly. In his mind, he could hear Lisa's voice from their last conversation on the hospital ship. She had been excited about helping people, about making the galaxy a better place. She had believed that kindness and compassion could overcome hatred and violence. She would understand, said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Amy said firmly. She wouldn't. The I knew 8 months ago would never point a weapon at his friends. The who worked on that hospital ship would never threaten innocent civilians. What happened to that person? Stared at the weapon in his hand. When had he become someone who threatened his own crew? When had he become someone who planned to kill millions of people to get revenge on a few dozen politicians? "They killed her," he whispered. "They murdered the most innocent person in the galaxy, and no one cared." "We cared," Dan said softly. "We all cared. That's why we followed you. But caring doesn't mean becoming a monster." Thought about the past 8 months. He had killed thousands of soldiers. He had destroyed hundreds of ships. He had crippled an entire empire's military forces. Had any of it brought Lisa back? Had any of it made the pain in his chest go away? "I just want them to pay," said, lowering the pistol. "They have paid," Amy replied. "Their empire is falling apart. Their military is destroyed. Their government is powerless. You've already won. You've already gotten justice for Lisa." Looked at the targeting display. With one command, he could eliminate the Imperial Council. He could complete his revenge and finally have closure. But he could also see Lysa's face in his memory, disappointed and sad. She had dedicated her life to healing, and he had become a bringer of death. She had believed in mercy, and he had chosen vengeance. Slowly stepped away from the weapons console. "Jake," he said quietly, "open a channel to Captain Cross." Cross appeared on the screen a few seconds later. "I surrender," said simply. "You can take me into custody." Cross looked surprised. "What changed your mind?" Glanced at the empty chair where Lisa used to sit during their research sessions. "I remembered what I used to believe in." An hour later was in the brig of the UES Defiant. His war was over. The Empire would spend years rebuilding their military, and they would never again attack civilian targets without fear of retaliation. As his cell door closed, pulled out the picture of Lisa he had carried throughout his campaign. She was smiling in the photo, full of hope and kindness. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the image. "I tried to honor you, but I lost my way." The galaxy would remember as the man who brought down the Empire. Some would call him a hero, others a war criminal, but knew the truth. He was just a broken man who had learned too late that revenge could never bring back the people you love. In the end, Lisa had saved him one more time, not from death, but from becoming something she would never have recognized. The hunt was finally over,